welcome Jim Gleason to our pulpit. And Miss Pam Gleason.
We have a special treat for you today. We're going to have a whisper sermon. It's been since Wednesday that I've had no voiceover. This is the best it's been all week. And imagine that, thinking you're going to do a sermon in a church on Sunday. I was praying a lot. And this is the best answer we've got so far. So those that are flipping up the volume, if you can't hear, just raise your hand and they'll do more, okay? It was 2 weeks ago that John invited me to give a sermon, and he suggested doing it based on the United Methodist Men's Conference that we were going to the following weekend, which is last weekend. And so I was very honored, because this has been a rite of passage for John and his sons. I mean, it was 8 years ago that AJ and John traveled down to Purdue, attended the conference, and then he goes wandering, visiting friends, makes a real vacation out of it. It's really a special time. 4 years ago, Matthew and I and John went down. I fly down, they drive down. That's important when you hear about what happened this time. But anyway, it really is a very special time to get to know the Dahl boys, more than you know them here. If Carol were here, she's probably the one who knows them better than that. But it's very special to see them with their dad. And I got to tell you, it was Robert's turn this year. And talk about respectful sons. I mean, their father is very independent, as you know. Nobody's taking off those crutches. We all stand there right there, oh my God. But he keeps going. And Robert was nearby, never in the way, always standing by. And John many times did say, all right, since he couldn't use both hands, you can take my breakfast tray and bring it back, kind of stuff. So he was always there ready to serve. But even more so, to see that young man engaged in the whole event. I mean, there's some really powerful preaching down there. And so, I've given the boys back a challenge, okay? They've got slides, and they've got sort of an outline, and they're trying to match what I'm talking about. And so, this was the 11th gathering. And 8 years ago, I think they had something like 6,000 Christian men gathered for a 3-day conference. 4 years ago, it was 2,500. They were expecting 4,000 this year. In all honesty, it was closer to 850 this year. Something's happening out there. We are challenged as Christian men and women. And I offer you that challenge. And so, on the next slide, we see the beautiful Belmont University in Nashville. You think, oh, he went to Nashville, he got all that music stuff. No, we never got off the campus. Okay, in fact, we didn't get around the whole campus between John's crutches and my knees. It was a challenge, but from the time I got there were things going on. And so I went prayerfully, anticipating God's message that would preach, as John would say. When I got to the airport, got off, got on the shuttle, hopped right on while the driver was putting bags in the back and registering people, and sat right in the front row behind the driver. He got in the car, in the shuttle, and waiting for some other people, and he's calling people. And I took my phone out, it was turned off while you're flying, and I turned it on. And I immediately got a phone call. Wow. I don't recognize the number, but hello? Yeah. Jim Gleason here, yeah. I get this voice that, Jim, is that you sitting behind me? It was the driver checking me. I hadn't checked in. I felt very special and I was welcome. There was somebody looking for me right there. And then, next thing I know, he looked like he was 90 or 100 years old. Elderly, wiry gentleman gets on the bus and off to my seat. And he sat down next to me. And I thought, wow, he's barely making it. Well, next thing I know, he pulls out his smartphone. Mine's not a smartphone. He takes care of his messages. And then he flips through the applications. I'm very impressed. He puts that away and pulls out his iPad and starts working the applications there. So I started having a conversation with this guy. Well, he's the vice president of the United Methodist Men District in Chicago. with responsibility for about 400 churches. Obviously, he's not 90, and he's certainly doing a lot with whatever age he was, but I'm not good at guessing ages. But the men were there, basically to worship God and to open their hearts to whatever message was there. And like I said, okay, you have no idea what it's like, well, some of you do, to have to give a sermon. Not have to, but given the honor of giving a sermon. But all of a sudden it weighs very heavily on what you're going to say. And all week you're working on it. So I'm going off this conference looking for the message for today. And let me tell you something. First of all, we arrived at Proper Hall, and everything was fine. Checked in, got my badge. You know, it's a very friendly environment. Everybody has names on everything. You know everybody, right? And so, checked in, got my badge, went over to get my room assignment and blankets and pillow and stuff. And she said, "I'm sorry, I don't have you in the system." I'm registered. I just went over to that table. They gave me my badge. You know? And I was supposed to be on the new friendly floor, the first floor, near the lobby, across from John, so I could help him if he needed it, right? Well, they finally resolved all that, and I ended up on the 4th floor, all the way down the end, around the bend, the last room you could possibly get to. I'm thinking to myself, God, you got me coming to the United Methodist thing. I'm doing my thing here. What's with this, right? Well, he had some plans for me that I didn't know about. And so I get to meet my roommate, Lonnie. I have to admit I was not impressed. I mean, he was just sort of strange, is the best way I could say it when I first encountered him. But you're in a dorm room, 2 beds are close together, you get to know each other real quick. And so Lonnie starts telling me his story. He found Christ when he was about 12. And then he drifted when he got about 16. Got involved with some gangs, ended up doing some bad things, ended up going to prison. And there he was with some guys who were rolling cigarettes, ripping pages out of a book to make cigarettes. And he later picked up the book. It was the Bible. He starts reading the Bible from the torn pages. And of course some of the sections hadn't been ripped out yet, so he started reading the Bible. And I'm thinking to myself, and I said to him, this is kind of dangerous. When these guys come back and find out you've got their cigarette roll paper, you know, you're not giving it to them, it's kind of dangerous. He said, yeah, they were a little upset, but I said, no, you do not rip up the Bible. He started defending the Bible in prison. And eventually the chaplain gave him a new Bible, and he really dedicated himself to Christ. When I met him, he had a scar across the side of his face. That's when he was shot in the face. As a result of which he was blind in his right eye and paralyzed on his right side. How he got to Nashville, I have no idea, but let me tell you something. That was just my first encounter with him. And every time I turned around, he was there someplace. He was jumping up in the middle of 800 men, praising Christ. He had definitely a character. And I think may say that in a very positive way. But I gotta tell you something, I went down expecting hot air down there, hot humid air. It was beautiful weather, except in the dorm rooms. It was freezing. You could not control the air conditioner no matter what I did that dial. I mean, it had to be 48 degrees in that room. And we had a very thin blanket or under it. I froze and I probably got the cold from that, okay? But we had some powerful speakers, so things started heating up when we got to the events. And with each of these speakers, I mean, I sat there waiting for the message that I was going to bring back to you. I thought, wow. I mean, they were so powerful in how they told their message. You wanted to copy exactly what they did. And of course, that didn't work. They were uniquely what they were. And so, first of all, Reverend Shane Bishop, who's not a bishop, just his name, he's the pastor of Christ United Methodist Church in Fairview, Illinois. He took his church membership in '99 from 200 people to membership of over 1,600. His message was, we're all not perfect, but we can do God's will and be good enough. And supported by some very humorous stories of how, as a pastor, he did things not quite right, but somehow God turned it into a blessing. I won't try to tell you that story, but I'm telling you, he had us in stitches for quite a time. Then you had David Delt, president of the Man in the Mirror Ministries. And his message was, the power of Jesus Christ can transform you from the inside out. And of course, that was the theme of the whole conference. Transformation from the inside. God taking what's inside us and bringing it out. and challenging us to reach out beyond ourselves. And ourselves, in that case, he was talking about our churches too. It's one thing to come within these confines and worship God and testify and so forth, but he challenging us to go out into the community and share that message that Christ brought to us. And then we had Don Davis. I'm giving them clues by turning around. Don Davis was huge. I mean, up here, big. NFL superstar, Super Bowl twice winner. And he's now the chaplain for the New England Patriots. And his message was all about discipling or ministering to the millennials. Those people who were born between 1984 and 2004. And so there's 80 million in that age group. Robert fit that age group. There were not a whole lot of people at this conference in that age group. And as he said, look to your left, look to your right, look beyond you, look ahead of you, said Davis. If they all look like you, you're going to die. He was talking about us in our church. If we look around us and that's all we see, it's more like us. Guess what? Every year we're getting older. And our church is getting older, and that's how churches die. I felt very blessed as I reflected on that to know we have young people. We have a vibrant children's ministry. We have family bringing their children here. We have a mix of all that. So I felt very hopeful despite his message. He urged all the men to pray for the millennials and within Christ with contagious compassion, constant prayer, concern for the people, and a Christ-centered purpose and message. What was really impressive about him was how he supported that with Scripture. And he had his Bible there, and he would wander around the platform and would come back to the Scripture, and just like that, he would whip to it. He danced through the Bible. I've never seen anybody do that before. I've seen, wait a minute, there we go, I got it. This guy, this big football player, I mean, he bounced through, I'm going to say about a dozen Scriptures. And the next speaker that came up said, I got to tell you something, he had no bookmarks. He had no tabs in that. He knew where to go in his Bible. He obviously lived his Bible. I sat there feeling very guilty, okay, because I come from a Catholic tradition, and jokingly I've heard it said that we pay our priest to read the Bible and tell us what it says. And so it's not a habit we have of reading the Bible. We don't bring a Bible to church. However, I'm married to Pam, and she does. And so she is my model. And I walked away from that a changed person. And it was kind of neat because he took us through 2 Samuel, all about David and his 3 mighty men. And later on, I was able to find that. In fact, it was kind of funny. We were over breakfast, and I said, John, what was that passage that Don referred to? And he pulls out a little black Bible, which has got print so small I cannot imagine how to use that. But anyway, he's looking for it. Robert picks up his smartphone. Oh, it's 2 Samuel, whatever. It was amazing to see the difference in a millennial being able to search in the Bible as opposed to the traditional page-by-page search. And so I went away very impressed with him, and afterwards we did get John and Robert to come up to Chaplain Don Davis, and we had to pray and over to it. It was very special. Yes. Then we got to Bishop James Swanson. He's the president of the General Conference of the United Methodist Men. His whole message was about Peter, showing us that transformation is possible. No matter where you are, you're going to make mistakes, you're not perfect, but look what Peter did. And he took us through the Scripture in the garden when Christ was being tried. And Peter denying him 3 times. The amazing thing about this, and I originally captured some video when I previewed with Pam, she said, don't do that to him. The 3 pictures there were really him warming up. He's a Methodist bishop, but I would have expected him to be a Baptist, the way he took hold of things. And the middle picture was him getting midway warmed up. And by the time he was at that 3rd picture, he was all over the place, just bouncing, screaming, and you can only imagine. And the men were really turned on by all that. And I thought, God, I can't do that back home. But it was so powerful there to hear his message as talking about Peter, the real message was, nobody's perfect, but we're all capable of recovery. And he urged the men to recover John Wesley's third word of grace. Wesley spoke about prevenient grace, justifying grace, and he expounded on sanctifying grace. And so it was an exciting set of speakers. These were just the main speakers. And then we had projects. And so the first thing, we had 3 projects going on that you could volunteer to participate in. And the first one is something called the PET project, Personal Energy Transport. What you see on that brochure there is a picture of a wooden go-kart type situation with a pair of pedals up here with a chain that goes to the wheels. So people who don't have legs to transport themselves can very cheaply have this personal energy transport. And so the men were building these things to send over to Africa. Right? And then there was the Stop Hunger Now. I signed up for that, I never got there. They were packaging 400,000 plastic bags of dehydrated food for emergency situations. Turned out that was held in the science building, which was way on the other side of campus. There was no rides getting over there. My knees were not going there. And so, first of all, you see 25,000 pounds of sweet potato were dumped at the loading dock of the center where we were. And the volunteers were to go bag them into small bags. And so 25,000 pounds of sweet potatoes, next slide, are transformed into 75,000 meals that were going to be delivered to food centers and food pantries that night. And they were leaving by noontime that day. I went to do that. I figured that'd be the closest one because it was just around the corner. I couldn't get anywhere near it. There were so many guys piled around it. So I helped with a couple of these plastic sacks and put them over there, but that wasn't going to be for me. John found a way to get in there, sat down, and Robert, he was working there too. And so I left them. I got to tell you, it was quite different from the time we got there, and everybody just jammed up and started doing things. Later on, I came back to see how John was doing, and lo and behold, now they had assembly lines. I mean, somebody got smart, and so the assembly lines passing these out instead of walking them out. Moving much better. But what I found myself able to do, my knees were not working, okay? And it was really frustrating because they had golf carts there that would go back and forth and give you a ride if you needed them. And there were no golf carts coming by when I needed them. Duh. I couldn't do the potatoes. I couldn't get to the other center. So I went up to the main desk and I said, do you need volunteers to drive those golf carts? Hands me a key. Don't drive in the grass, don't drive in the bricks. Okay. For the next 10 hours, I was the angel of mercy for so many people who had knees as bad or worse than mine. And as much as I tried to be there for John, he was not one of them. Yeah, I got to talk to him and give him rides at times, but he was so independent with his crutches. I got to tell you something. If you're traveling with John, and you got bad knees, one, you don't complain about your knees. You're following him, and you're having one heck of a time keeping up with him. And so it really was amazing. And that was our box lunch time. And so I was actually sitting in the car talking to them in between, taking people rides. So for 10 hours, I got to know that campus inside out. Everybody was confused as to where they're going. I was the guy that said, don't worry, I know where to go. Hop on. I had a ball. And I rescued so many. And because of the name tags, my natural was, so what's your name? Where are you from? And got stories from everybody. It was really amazing to meet so many people with my card of mercy there. And so, those were the projects. And then we had, of course, music and the men's mass choir. There's a bunch of men who were at the call in the beginning, volunteered to sing together for the final service. And so every day, they turned out for choir practice. And at the end, and I had this on video for you, the sound was not good at all. But the band was really amazing. And Phil Stacy, I don't know if you know him, I didn't know him, was one of the top 5 finalists on the American Idol TV show. Did one heck of a time. His song is what the theme of the whole conference was about, From the Inside Out. And that was his song. It combines his musical gift with a real passionate heart for God. It was really an amazing time. And the men's choir, they didn't match up to our choir at all, to be honest, but at the same time, Sharon said to me this morning, she said, are you going to introduce the hymns? And I said, you got me kidding. Even when I have a voice, I can't do that. And so I didn't volunteer for that, but they did an amazing job as we got into the Sunday service. And as we sat there, John looked at the time and he said, our Asbury is about to start their service. We joined hands and we were here with you. It was very special. I just wanted you to know that. And so the bishop then did his communion service, and 800, 900 men went up and received communion. It was a beautiful service, but we were very much tied to you here. After the service was over, it was about 9:30, 9:45, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. You know, to get home early, because I had a noontime shuttle, but it was 9:45, and if I got out there quick enough, maybe I could get on that 10 o'clock shuttle, and there was an earlier plane, 11:45, maybe I could get on that. I'd be home at 3 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock. Wouldn't this be good? God had said, I've got a plan for you, but I wasn't listening yet. Okay? And so I got on the 10 o'clock shuttle, I was down at the airport at 10:30, and I checked in, and it said, your flight's been canceled. You are now on the 5:30 flight through Washington National, said direct, and you will get home about 11:30. Not going to happen. Okay? I'm going to stand by on that earlier flight. I bet you I get on because you've got with me. I'm at the United Men's Conference. They're going to get me on this flight. Did not happen. Okay? And so there I was, and first thing I did is I called her to say, don't come pick me up at 5. It's not working, but listen, I'm working on it. And I realized I only had one bar left. So I had to turn off my phone rather than get here and not be able to tell, by the way, my plane is landing, come pick me up type situation. But that's okay, because I had my Kindle with me, and that's where all my books are. I can kill any amount of time on a Kindle, so I got into my Kindle, and about a half hour into this 10-hour delay, my Kindle battery went dead. I still didn't recognize the message, okay? I'm still fighting for this one. And so I went behind some seats and I laid down on the floor, get some sleep. That didn't work either. And so I got up, had a little bit of lunch, and now it's 1 o'clock. Still a lot of time to kill, all right? And so finally I'm just desperately looking. I looked in my bag to see what was there. And so I reached in, and what did they give me? New Testament. This non-Bible reader then started wandering through looking for some of the references that really hit me while I was there. I'm looking up Acts 22. 6 through 16, Paul's conversion. That really touched me. And so I worked on that a little bit. I found Samuel, David, and his 3 mighty men. All right. But having done that, I was still looking for a book. And lo and behold, they'd given us a free book, The Man in the Mirror. Solving the 24 problems men face. I was desperate. I started reading. I got to chapter 5 before finally God said, okay, I'm going to let you start moving now. I stood by on the 4:30 flight, no standbys on that one. Got the 5:30 flight, got up to Washington, another 2-hour layover, got a couple more chapters read. Did you care to guess what chapter 5 is about? Paul and his conversion. Okay, got it, I think. And so I was looking for something to start writing some notes about it. What did I have to write with? Well, they gave us something. I had no idea what it was. A 3 reminder of something, so I took this out to try and read it. It's a men's journal. Something to write on. And so I found myself challenged with what I just read into writing down some of my commitments, some of the things that changed me because of this conference. And so from that standpoint, we talk about God sightings here, okay? When you open up to them, they're all over the place. I did get home by midnight, thanks to Pam picking me up there. And then accepted God's message of this is what we're going to use our message today, Paul's conversion. And try and preserve this voice just a little bit. I begged Pam to read the scripture for us instead of me trying to do it. So, if you would be.
Don't quite think he needs my help.
Paul's letter in Acts 22, 6 through 16. About noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" I asked. "I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting," he replied. My companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. "What shall I do, Lord?" I asked. "Get up," the Lord said, "and go into Damascus. There you will be told all that you have been assigned to do." My companions led me by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. He stood beside me and said, "Brother Saul, receive your sight." And at that very moment, I was able to see him. Then he said, "The God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all people of what you have seen and heard. And now, what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name."
And so that was the message that hit me through all those great speakers, and that God wasn't letting me out of that airport until I had accepted that and done some work on it. And so, coming home, I really was looking at some of the things that they had given us and looking at a personal conversion. Each of us was challenged to return home a different person when we came, and to come home and share that with our local congregations. And so I took that journal and I started writing it. And I started with some fairly simple things. So for example, every night I watched 2.5 Men on Channel 17. It's a funny show, two episodes. But the more I thought about it, that is a terrible show. Womenizing, drinking, and even a child seeing all that. I thought, how can you as a Christian man be watching that show? And so after years of watching that show, I committed myself to instead replace that with some Christian activity for our church. And then I turned, there was another new show that just came on, summer camp or something like that. It sounded interesting. And on the computer I was able to see the first episode. I watched that. How is that a parent-rated show? I mean, I couldn't watch that one either. I got very concerned just thinking about what we're doing in our society, that these things have become so acceptable that I can sit there and watch it every day. I don't have time to read the Bible every day, but I got time to watch this garbage. And so I changed myself. I want to make Bible study and reflection a part of my life. Also part of our marriage life. I mean, I've got an inspired person who works with the Bible all the time right there, and to share that. I'm also committed to make our United Methodist Men Bible study a reality. For 3 years we've been talking about doing this, and we've never done it. We did the first year, and the men who attended got a lot out of it. We keep saying, yeah, we want to do it, and we haven't done it. Then we're going to do it. I don't care if I'm the only person there. If you want to sign up. And so this morning, just as something I could hold up, I looked in the envelope I got from the General Conference to find out what this year's Bible study is about. Would you care to guess who our character in the Bible is to be studied this year? Paul. Yeah, right. Got the message, I think. Okay? So men, you're going to get tall. You want to see me beforehand? We've got to find out when and where can we do this that fits everybody's schedule, because we had a great time with it. And we haven't gotten back to it. We will get back to it. And I confess, I don't know how to serve United Methodist Men. Hey, I can put together an agenda. I can email it out. We can have a good, fun meeting, but I need prayerful support. I need the help of the men to come together and find out what more can we do in this church as the men of Asbury. And as we said before, the men of Asbury are not the ones that just come to the breakfast, not the ones that come to the luncheon. They're all men. And so whether you come to it or not doesn't make any difference. You are an Asbury Methodist men. And I challenge you as I challenge myself to make a difference and to use what we just read about Paul. Okay? need to know the Lord. And then the real challenging part